I did not grow up around a bunch of people who would be skeptical as a default,
Mm.
right? So, was I a positive? Am I a positive person by default? Yes, and that is further encouraged by my willingness, rather, to take calculated risks and to see that they reasonably work out.
Somebody who came out of medical device sales and built a career that put you in a place where you are. How did how did your early years impact today? If you had to look back on what was a driving force for your good ideas today that you didn't think were necessarily impactful then.
Hi, Jeb. So happy to be here on this show. Thanks for having me. Wow, that's a doozy of a first question. So, how do I think that my early, more formative years of my career have kind of shaped or still have influence on what I do today? I think. Well, the first thing that always comes to my mind when someone asks me this is the mentorship that I received, and had I not received it, I wouldn't have um, I was ready to leave sales. I told myself that I'm going to try this for a year, and if I don't like it, I was really good at what I did before. I'll just go back. And I was nearing that point, really from nobody's fault. There were some things that happened literally right after I got hired that prevented me from getting some of the stuff, some of the enablement essentially that I was promised. So, um, but I had a mentor, and that mentor showed me things that I hadn't even considered were possible. So immediately, the stage is set for me to explore and be curious
Mm.
and to wonder what's next. And in some ways, to over index on optimism. Because, oh man, if I did that before, look at what else is out there. I can go, I can go, I can go. The part of that mentorship that I learned, and what was later very well documented as the challenger sales philosophy, was this idea that I brought value to my customers, even though at the time they were orthopedic surgeons, even though some of them had been operating longer than I was alive. I had value that made them better at what they did. And it's interesting to think about that now. So I love the question. Thanks again for asking it. I would never have thought that. I would never have thought that I could, and almost every single surgeon customer that we had came to us and said, because of what you made me pay attention to, because a lot of it had to do with the system and the design of our product. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that, but like, you're making me a better surgeon because you're making me think about surgery differently.
Hmm.
That's a weird thing to tell somebody or that's a weird thing to hear as a 24-year-old, right? And so I think that sets the stage for, okay, what's real value
Mm.
as a salesperson? Um, and also throughout when we talk about value, when we talk about why other people would ever take a conversation with you, whether or not you're trying to sell them something or just trying to network, right? This idea that if you're always thinking about what is valuable to the other person and are finding ways to try to bring that, you're going to be someone that people want to be with.
Mm.
And then I step that a little bit further forward, and we don't need to dig into this too much right now, but I think that the best salespeople out there don't have better selling skills than most other people. They have better life skills than other people. And that's what really separates the top from the rest of the pack. Because selling skills will only take you so far. So when I take a look at what selling skills are and how to extrapolate those things into life, those are the things that I think about, that I don't think there's any way I would have done that if at 23, 24, I was feature benefit closing people in a door-to-door manner, right? You miss the bigger, more profound um, aspect of what's really going on.
I like the delineation between sales skills and life skills, and this is where I agree that the top salespeople that I have worked with, that have sold to me, that our trainers interact with, that you interact with, are have the life skills that just accelerate everything they do, and the sales skills just give them the structure to succeed. And sales skills I think of as like, okay, can you pick up the phone every single day and make sure you prospect? Can you write a good email? Do you, when you run the process, are you asking for next steps? Do you run a structured process that's non-linear but allows you to be flexible? and still in the direction of closing the deal and then continue to close and negotiate. Like those are the block and tackle sales skills. You can always get better at them. You can practice them, and it's good. But you're you're a couple points here. You mentioned that you over indexed even though you were not in a situation where you were supposed to be optimistic. Are you an optimistic person out the gate, or did you develop that skill? And how did that dynamic work for you when you were like, "Hey, I'm gonna raise my hand and get the hell out of this because this is hard, and I was good at what I did," and that mentor was helping you? Like, how did you encapsulate optimism in a way that helped you move forward?
From a young age, I was told that I was talented, that I was smart, that I was handsome, that I was athletic. Like I had good levels of success. And I had boatloads of insecurities that everybody else had. So let's not even go into that, right? But the idea that it was my responsibility to use these gifts kind of drives me in that direction. And then being, whether it's self-aware enough or whatever, to just recognize that most of the things that I really dedicate myself to, I end up being pretty good at, just kind of creates the environment where it's like, all right, if I pursue that, if I choose to pursue that, then I'm pretty confident that I'm gonna succeed. So that allowed me later in my career to take risks and, start a sales training and consulting company because I don't like where I am right now. I don't see anywhere that I want to go. So let's just create something, right? And so it's a lot of self-belief, but also the optimism that good things are out there for you if you put yourself in position to earn them and to get lucky and to do all those things. So I think a lot of my positive attitude came from my parents because they believed in me, and my mom was real big on, thinking positive and stuff, almost in a cliche way, sometimes. But um, I did not grow up around a bunch of people who would be skeptical as a default,
Mm,
right? So, was I a positive? Am I a positive person by default? Yes, and that is further encouraged by my willingness, rather, to take calculated risks and to see that they reasonably work out.
hmm.
So that just encourages me to do it more. And then, of course, you set yourself on the path where you start reading Stephen Covey and Napoleon Hill and the Jeffrey Gittimers and the Jeb Blunts of the world and all the yeah, I can name names that are all people close to you and me. And all of a sudden, you realize that so much of that belief is really under your control and your responsibility. So once I'm started, I didn't need to be sold on this idea that I could think positively. And then once I started down that path, you realize how much is out there for you to continue to instill that. And that's where I've been.
I like that. I mean, I think it well, one, it speaks to a lot of people's experience, especially in this profession where you have a lot of success probably through, your high school years or your adolescence and then into your early career, and you're told a lot of great things and you have a lot of background to succeed. And so you get into these places and, in my experience, I'm not a positive person by trade. Like I am a
Mm.
skeptical person by nature. I have to work really hard at optimism, but those people that in your case represent to me what I want to be because you show a resilience to find good things for yourself. To say, if I put myself out there and I work hard at it, good things will happen. And that is when you talk about name dropping all the people that we know. I think like Amy Franco, Jeffrey Gittimer, Jeff Bajorek, Jeb Blunt, all these different people that are in our world, Mark Hunter and Anthony Iannarino. What's interesting about all of them
Bet-
is that they're
Better
sort of
name them all, Jeb, or someone's
I
going to be
I
mad,
know. I
right?
gotta
We got to
figure
go
out
through
which
the
ones
whole
I
list now.
gotta. If I look at all of those folks and I compare them, well, one common thread is that if I put myself out there and do the work, good things will happen.
Mhm.
And when, as a skeptic, as someone who's negative, just by trade, just how my disposition is, when I have to practice optimism, what I do is I say, you know what, that principle works even if you're not optimistic. If you put yourself out there and work hard, good things will happen. It doesn't matter if you're positive or negative, right? If you do that work, you will end up in the same place. Now you have to work on your mindset more on one side than the other, but I want to ask you this: at what point in your career did you become self-aware of yourself in the sense that, okay, I'm gonna take all these things that I have and figure out how to bottle them, and I'm gonna work on the process, and I'm gonna work on elevating this skill in particular or this skill in particular. Because for me, it took a long time. I'm 20. I'm 27, so a long time. But I'm 27 now. It probably took me until I was in my late 25, 26 or so to stop and look around and say, you know what, I'm gonna work on this, and this, and these are the things I'm gonna take away. I was sort of for a long time operating with the idea that I'm just gonna be who I am, and it's working. And it
Hmm.
wasn't very self-aware. Does that make sense? And how have you sort of worked through that process yourself?
So I'm old enough to remember cassette tapes. And there's a point of that. When I first started selling, my first ever, my hiring manager, he gave me this set of tapes. And it was Harvey McKay, Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive.
Hmm.
And so I'm listening to this stuff and I'm like, huh, that's pretty cool. And so then I remember giving those back to my boss. And I mean, we were to the point of CDs, but this was an old program, right? So I remember there was the Nightingale Conant Corporation. And I don't know if they're still around. They've probably been absorbed into CEO Read or something like that. But
Yes.
if any of those are sponsors of the program, then you're welcome. And if they're not, send them an invoice and see if they're happy to sponsor. But I just remember being so curious about this, and I was like, okay, this is stuff that'll help me. And what else am I going to do when I'm spending time in the car? There's only so much sports talk radio you can listen to, and so I just remember my curiosity being driven by all these programs that were available, and they were basically free to me because there was a 30-day money back guarantee. So I would just get them and then send them back. And they were happy to keep sending me, these things. And I kept a couple of them, it helped my conscience feel better about it. Right. But that was the whole point. I basically had a library by mail, almost like Netflix before Netflix. And I continued to learn. So there was never a point where I was like, okay, I need to be a better negotiator.
Hmm.
It was never a point where I need to be a better prospector. And it's not that I'm perfect at any of or all of those things, but it was just like, this program sounds interesting. I'm going to listen to that and see what I can take from it. This program sounds interesting. And so I just I got a bunch of really well-rounded skills just by kind of following what my curiosity would bring me to.
Hmm.
And then, I think where it all kind of came to a head was when I realized that there were a lot of things that sounded good to me that I learned that I was telling myself, yeah, but I can't do it that way right now. I'm too fixed in these routines and things like that. And when that change was made was when I left that company and took a job with a new company. And I said, okay, I remember where I was. I mean, I'm looking at the spot. My desk used to be over there. And I remember where I was sitting. I was like, if I'm going to make this work, if I'm going to give this a go, then it's time to put all those things that I've been denying for a while, all those techniques, those approaches, those little rules of thumb, those little tactics. I'm either going to commit to those and to this, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Hmm.
Right. And it was kind of like, if this stuff works, like I believe it'll work, then why aren't I doing it? And if it doesn't work, then maybe I'm just not cut out to be in sales. I had had enough success to convince me I was on the right path. I had not had enough success that I was totally bought in yet.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't until I said, okay, I got to do this. And just little scoring systems for myself and little just ways to approach sales calls and things like that. And then, over the next 18 months, I tripled the revenue in a stagnant territory that I took over. I was like, oh, hey, maybe I'm onto something here.
Hey, I'm doing a happy dance because you watched this video. Make sure that you click like and subscribe so that you never miss one of our amazing sales training videos.